Fugitive Chefs isn't becoming bigger because we are getting more famous guests, but it's becoming bigger because the question we are asking has become bigger. When I started Fugitive Chefs, I thought I knew exactly what kind of a podcast I was building. I thought it was about chefs leaving restaurants, about alternative careers. I thought it was about telling sort of inspirational stories of people who had gone from kitchen into food companies, startups, education, or entrepreneurship, because those were the paths that looked very mysterious to me. And I thought the only way I could explore them is by talking to those who have made that transition. And I thought those conversations sort of benefited me to help me make the transition. And I thought, okay, if that helped me, it might help others. So why not give it a platform where I can also document it, get to know more people, and build expertise in that field. But over the last year, I've realized that I was asking a much smaller question than I should have been asking. Because the real question isn't how do chefs leave restaurants? The real question, I think, is how do we create a food industry where culinary expertise coming from chefs creates more value in more places than it does today? And honestly, that's also why there hasn't been a new episode for the past 2 weeks. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fugitive Chefs. If this is your first time here, my name is Furqan, and this is the podcast where we explore how culinary expertise can create value across the modern food system. Usually, at this point, I would be introducing today's guest, but today I wanted to have a conversation with you because over the last few weeks, I have been doing something I probably should have done way earlier. I've stopped, I've looked back. I have somehow done this summer audit of everything we've built over the last year, I would say. The podcast, the community, the newsletters, the website, the research that I'm proudly running, the guests that I'm having on the podcast, the workload that goes into bringing this. And most importantly, I've asked myself a very uncomfortable question. If I keep running Fugitive Chefs exactly the way I've been running it, is this actually sustainable? The honest answer was no. Not because I don't love doing it or my passion for this has gone down alongside my full time job, but it's quite the opposite. I realized there were parts of Fugitive Chefs, the whole project, that gave me enormous energy, and there were parts that completely drained me, to be very honest with all of you. Once I noticed that pattern, I couldn't really ignore it anymore. I could see it in every step of building this. Finding guests has never been the problem, even though when I started this podcast back in the day, it was a different name, was Spanish, English every week parallelly, and even those two languages I was running because I thought I might run out of people in one language, so why not just have two languages? So that has not the finding people part has not tired me. Researching about those guests has not been the problem. I'm writing Substack essays also now once in 3 weeks. So that has not even been the problem. Reaching out to people I admire that I see on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever the platform is in my work day to day, even that has not kept me holding back. The only thing I have been postponing and I keep pushing is editing. Every time I finished recording an episode, I knew I still had hours and hours of work ahead before anyone else, I mean, you guys in this case, would even see it. I could absolutely learn to become a better editor. I'm not very bad at technology. I think that comes inherently with, I guess, being Indian of sorts, to call it out loud. But just because I can do something doesn't really mean that it's the best use of my time. When I look back over the last year, I realized that almost every opportunity that's come from Fugitive Chefs has come from conversations, curiosity, writing, or primarily bringing people together. I would say, even if it's a one-way platform, I hope there's people out there who are interacting with it because I see your likes and comments on LinkedIn, Instagram. I see your messages when you reach out. So I think it's a two-way platform. And yeah, that's the part I really enjoy, but not really sitting in front of Riverside and then, I don't know, CapCut, Adobe Premiere Pro, whatever that is. Because, and that was honestly a very difficult thing to admit to myself because as creators, especially when we are building something from scratch, we often convince ourselves that we have to do everything, we have to know everything, we have to research, record, edit, publish, social media, Reels, TikTok, website, emails, community, all of that. But somewhere along the way, I realized that doing everything myself wasn't making the podcast better. It was actually slowing it down. So over the last 2 weeks, instead of forcing myself to publish another episode, to edit it myself, which I do a pretty good job at if I still have you listening over here, I decided to invest that energy somewhere else. Completely redesigned how people join the community. That's one of the big achievements I've had in the past 2 weeks. It's a boring onboarding scenarios that I had to create, and how I was receiving people to join the community, how I was streamlining all the data behind them, sending newsletters, programming automations over there. So I sort of rebuilt all of that. I rebuilt parts of the website as well. We hosted another community meetup actually last week. Uh, and I've been also interviewing people I genuinely wanted to learn from. We have around 6, 7 episodes already recorded, and still I held back to posting and editing them because part of this I've been also spending time to meet editors, see what's out there on the freelancing platforms, because I don't want this project to entirely depend on whether I have time, I have energy after I finish my full-time job, which still is where most of my time in the day goes. So I want it to become sustainable, not just for a month, but hopefully for many years. Something else happened during these last few weeks that really changed how I think about Fugitive Chefs is that some of you might have read a Substack essay I recently published. It was called Why Food Companies Say They Want Chefs, but often don't know how to organize them, or something on those lines. And it was intentionally provocative, just like the last one, that the one that said chefs don't need another degree. I've been doing these provocative essays because I feel that's my natural voice. That's the natural way I things go on my head, and that can be provocative, can offend people. But I have been very surprised by the reception it has received, because I think that we need to ask these questions which make people uncomfortable at the right places. And I think that's what happened, because over the past, this is like 1 month ago, when the Chefs Don't Need Another Degree article came out, somebody I look up to and really admire, Michael Barker, coming from Culinary Institute of America, CIA. He's the president and CEO over there. He reached out. I saw him subscribe to the Substack first. And then I reached out to him, to be very honest, to say that, hey, I've seen that you reacted to this. And based on that, we started having conversations. We have also since recorded what I genuinely believe is one of the most important episodes we've ever done. That's gonna come out very soon once I find this editor. And I think it's an important episode not because he is the president of one of the world's most influential culinary institutions, but because we weren't really talking about just culinary schools. We were talking about the future of culinary education, what expertise looks like, what employers actually need, how education and industry should evolve together. And that conversation made me realize something, that people shaping the future of chefs aren't only chefs. Sometimes they are educators, sometimes they are researchers, sometimes they are founders of companies, sometimes they are innovation leaders within companies, sometimes they are the people who are hiring chefs inside these food organizations. And if Fugitive Chefs only interviews chefs who have made it, we are missing half the story. That's, at least that's how I see it. A few days later, after recording this episode with Michael, I spent a Sunday at the Neo Winkel here at Nijmegen, where I live now in the Netherlands, recording another episode. It's honestly one of the first, actually the first episode since I've restarted the podcast for more than over a year now. It's the first time I recorded an in-person episode. I had honestly completely lost touch with the tech side. It was a little challenging, but it was a very interesting episode because it wasn't really about the restaurant, neither was it about them who work in R&D, but it was about the R&D lab that they have built around the restaurant, how a restaurant can generate knowledge and IP, how restaurants can collaborate with startups, with food companies, with universities, get grants from academic institutions, how they create products, how they think about intellectual property, or IP as we call it, which is something many restaurants struggle with, how they create new revenue streams, which is super interesting for me because to make life of a chef better in terms of not having the classic image of what you see in the bed or wherever you get your image of what a life of a chef is, but basically somebody who works weekends, works evenings, sacrifices more than he or she should, earns less than they should. I think an idea of what they're doing over there, which you'll see when the episode comes out, really challenges this. Does the life of a chef in restaurants have to be like that? And for that to come in, what's the excuse that's always used is that there's not enough money or somebody has to pay the bills, and that's why people will have to work on the weekends when people need to dine. These guys are building something that is challenging all of those preconceived notions because they're building revenue streams that don't depend on clients. So for me, again, it was not another career story like we have had so far. It was another piece of a much bigger puzzle. And that's when everything finally clicked for me. And that's what I've been saying since the beginning of this episode. And the reason I also changed the intro to this episode, I used to say it's a podcast where you bring stories of chefs who have left restaurants and found careers outside. But today it's about not just that, but an extension of that, which is how to take culinary expertise. What does that even mean? What do culinary capabilities mean? Which is something I'm exploring. on taking that further away from just restaurant model, on how can that extend. Fugitive Chefs isn't becoming bigger because we are getting more famous guests, because that's honestly true. That's what's been happening. But it's becoming bigger because the question we are asking has become bigger. The platform has become bigger. Originally, the podcast asked something on the lines of what else can chefs become? Today, I think the question is what kind of a food system do we need if we want culinary expertise to create its maximum value? That changes everything. It changes who comes onto the podcast. It changes the research I'm doing, which is somehow connected to the podcast, but I do research in my free time. It's something I enjoy. And some of the stories don't show up in the podcast. It's an extended research of the same vision behind the podcast. It changes the community, how we work in Fugitive Chefs Circle, which is this community I run with most of you who are listeners of the podcast. It changes what comes out in terms of content, social media, newsletter, the kind of conversations I want to have. We'll absolutely continue bringing incredible chefs to the podcast. That is the core of this, right? It's stories like mine and stories like the ones I've had before. They matter. Those voices to have a stage matters. But alongside them, you'll start hearing from university leaders, hiring managers, innovation directors, researchers, founders, people building food companies, people funding food companies like VCs, people redesigning culinary education, like Michael, who I just mentioned. And we have Adrian Woodhouse from New Zealand, who's going to be on the podcast very soon as well. People creating opportunities that most chefs don't even know exist, because you can do a lot by listening how Johnny Drain made it, how Dan Giusti made it, how I myself made it outside restaurants. But you also need the other side of the network, which if you think about it, it's called the hard side of the network. Every network has a easy or softer side, which is you guys. There are people who want to make that transition. But the hard side is those hiring managers who are just posting senior positions or are posting vague job descriptions or responsibilities or competencies which you do not know how to fill in. And those are the kind of people I want to bring on this podcast, to give them a platform, yes, but to also give you all access to people like those by putting you virtually in the same room, be it over Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, wherever you listen to this. If somebody discovered Fugitive Chefs today and asked me what it is, my answer would be also very different from what I would have said a year ago. I would tell them this: Fugitive Chefs is for anyone who loves this industry, loves this profession, loves working with food, but doesn't believe their career should be limited to one definition of what it means to be a chef. It's becoming a place where chefs, researchers, educators, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders all contribute to one shared question: how do we create better careers, better organizations, better education, and ultimately a better food industry? One thing that has surprised me most, I would say, over the last year is the diversity of people who are now listening. And this was something I realized last week when we had the Fugitive Chefs Circle meetup. The kind of people who showed up. We have had experienced development chefs with over 40 years in the industry, like Paul Lees, who's a senior development chef at Givaudan, has worked at all the food industry companies you can name it. He was in the same room as people who have never even gone to culinary school yet. They are people who are passionate about this industry, don't see a future of themselves in the version of the industry that they are exposed to, but they do see some possibilities to work with food in their own way. We've had students, founders, scientists, restaurant owners, innovation chefs, and increasingly, I would say they're all part of the same conversation. And that's exciting, because I don't think we are just documenting career transitions anymore, which is what I would say Fugitive Chefs 1.0 or even 2.0 was. I think we are helping build the future of this profession. So, honestly, thank you for sticking with me through these last couple of weeks. The podcast isn't slowing down. If anything, it's becoming much more ambitious. And that comes with a lot of responsibilities, a lot of work at my end. Over the coming weeks, you will hear conversations with Michael Barker. I mean, I've already revealed it now, so might as well list it out for you. You'll have Michael Barker from CIA coming on, Adrian Woodhouse, who's running a very interesting culinary design institute in New Zealand. Alan Burgo, which many of you know as the Forager Chef. That's how he goes on Instagram. We have Tiffany Pro again from CIA as well. The team behind the R&D lab at the New Winkle, Jan and Georges, who are ex-Spora from Alchemist as well. They're going to be on the podcast. These are all already recorded. They are coming. The only difference is that from now on, I'm building a system that gives those conversations the quality, consistency, and the reach they deserve. Because me alone can't just do that. So just bear with me. Give me the space to be able to bring to you quality content, because the stories are, I mean, they are amazing stories, but they just need the right person to edit them, to give the right consistency to it. And honestly, yeah, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for reading the Substack. Thank you for joining the community, for sending messages of support, for introducing guests. Many of you pitched to me people I should speak to, and that's something I really appreciate. For challenging my thinking also, and for believing in this idea, even as it's changing, the version of Fugitive Chefs that I bring to you, because the truth is, I'm still figuring it out. But I think we are asking much better questions than we were a year ago. And that's a good place to build from. So thank you for being here. I will see you next week, and I will leave all the links to everything I mentioned in the description. I would really love if all of you can leave a comment where you're listening from, send some support in the terms of putting a like on YouTube or hitting the button for rating on Spotify, following on Apple Podcasts, wherever you are. I think everything you do makes this one-person project a little more easier. So yeah, thank you so much for sticking through, and I will see you next week.